Welcome to episode 90 of the Coast to Coast AFL podcast with Nick and Blaze. I am Blaze, your host, and in this episode, we tackle Geelong, the runners-up in the 2025 Grand Final. They have been at the top for almost 30 years, give or take a couple of years where they've been out of the top 8. We talk about, I guess, why they're still so good, could their downfall be coming, and what's next for the rest of their aging players. But other than that, how are you doing, Mr. Cyrek?
Not too bad, not too bad. I know we've only had like an hour between the last time you've asked say that, but no, I'm really looking forward to this one because maybe a few people won't be as interested because again, glazing over the Geelong Cats and how good they are, people are sort of sick of it. But again, I think this will be a very interesting episode, and hopefully you can see where the Cats were sort of dominant and where they might becoming a bit short this year. So, yeah, but apart from that, feeling good.
Yeah, I'm feeling the same again, as I said in the episode we had just recorded, which will be the Fremantle episode you would have already seen. It's a bit of a scorcher here in Melbourne, so I'm just chilling out. Thankfully, on my weekend, it's pretty good. But yeah, I'm very interested in tackling Geelong in this episode. There is so much that they do right, but with the times that they falter, they tend to falter pretty hard.
Yeah, exactly. And sort of alluded to it because Geelong Cats, I think in 2025, they were the Cats without the cream. They did everything right except for win the premiership. So we go through their games for 2025. And yeah, it was pretty much as impressive a regular season as it can be. Apart from a random loss against the Saints early, everything was, and the Blues. Everything was relatively to expected. Had a lot of good wins at GMHBA Stadium, except randomly to the Lions. But they were able to beat them in the qualifying finals once I got there. They had a fantastic win against the Hawthorn Hawks in the preliminary finals, and all up to that, it's just scores of over 100. Their offense capabilities were through the roof. Did rack it up against some lesser teams, but still were able to get 100 points against some pretty good defenses. But then, obviously, not needing to be explained too much, the grand final happened, and yeah, it was really just an offensive capitulation. They weren't that good at stoppages either. We'll talk about it a bit later. But yeah, it was just sort of, they were tracking for half. They weren't that efficient, and then the Lions were able to outmuscle them like they did a couple of times beforehand in the season. So really, it was a bit disappointing. But at the end of the day, it was still such a fantastic season. I know they had a fairly easy schedule, but I still think they were one of the best. I still think they were the best overall season team in 2025, despite Brisbane obviously deserving their premiership. I'm not going to go back and not claim that, you know.
Yeah, I think the fact that the only time, apart from the loss, I guess, to the Saints and to Carlton, the only times they ever lost was to like actual high quality teams. Shows just how dominant Geelong were this season. Their midfield core was fantastic. The defense was fantastic. Their forward line was fantastic. They have so many good aspects and very little, very little bad aspects, essentially. And it's the only time you ever really see those bad aspects kind of come to light is when a team is able to get over them.
Yeah, exactly. And we'll probably mention Brisbane specifically because they were, even though they were 1-3, there were some very interesting matchups. But we'll go to the statistical overview, and I'm not sure if I'm going to get through all this, but I just want you to sort of take in how good, especially offensively, Geelong were.
That's
We'll go
insane.
we'll,
To put it simply, for our offensive stats here, all of them are like first, second, or third in the league, except for one specific stat.
yeah, like Oh, that's not even really it. Like, the only one that isn't I've listed that isn't third, second, or third is offensive one-on-ones, which was 12th in the league,
which
fourth.
is fourth.
Which that's just a context stat. Like, you're not better or worse if you go to more one-on-ones. I think it does mean you get a lot more score off turnovers because I think they're more likely to lead to one-on-ones. But but in saying this, there were a lot more seconds that I just didn't put in because like they'd done something else a bit better. So I'll put first there. So we'll go through them fairly quickly. Goals 15.4, 15.4 per game, second in the league. Goal assists, 12, second in the league. Unique goal scorers per game, 8.8, which is second in the league. Shots per game, 30.1, which is tied first in the league. Inside 50s, 56.3, which is tied third in the league. Goals per inside 50, 27.3, which is tied second in the league. Sorry, just flat second in the league. Inside 50 retention rate, 52.6, which is first in the league. Offensive one-on-one win rate. And this is a massive one. They were, I think, near the bottom last year in this stat. And they've gone to 31.8, which is first in the league. I'll talk about a bit about that at the end, but that's interesting. I mentioned the offensive one-on-one. That's 12th at fourth. Marks inside 50, 15.7, first in the league. Mark inside 50 rate, 27.9, which is first in the league. Inside 50 ground ball get 16.5, third in the league. Tackles inside 50, 14.1, first in the league. Score from turnover, 59.2, first in the league. Score from forward half, 52, first in the league. Chain from score, 25.1%, second in the league. A quarter of their chains result in a score, basically. And their defensive 52 score is 12.9, first in the league, so they can even do it from their own defensive 50. Yeah, as I said, there was technically more. I just didn't want to bore you all. But essentially, there were two really, really potent offenses. And I will say, some of these seconds in the league, like, they were close to the first, which were the Bulldogs. But then you have a massive gap between the next person. Like,
Yeah.
it's insane how good the Western Bulldogs offense was without being in the top 8. But it's also insane that Geelong just had such a wide breadth of offensive statistics. Because again, like, they had some flaws last year. Again, they weren't quite a good offensive 1v1 team. They didn't quite have as much retention rate. Their kicking wasn't as good from last year. But all of that is not is sort of remedied. And I think one of the biggest reasons for that is the emergence of Shannon Neal. Because last year, Jeremy Cameron was forced to take a lot more offensive one-on-ones. And a lot of them were in tougher positions. Like, Jeremy Cameron was just such a focal point. And the fact that they've been able to split it has just diversified an already potent and diverse offense.
Well, on the couple of games that Shannon Neal was able to play in 2024, primarily when Hawkins was out with injury, like, you could see he had a huge amount of talent. He just didn't have enough time to like hone the craft under Hawkins, because Hawkins was still taking a lot of that time. That was probably more reserved for Shannon Neal. But since Hawkins retired, Shannon Neal moved up into being that second primary tall. It took a lot less pressure off of Jeremy Cameron's shoulders, which is why Cameron had to take a lot of the brunt in 2024, because Hawkins, again, was injured for half the games that he still played and just couldn't do as much as he should have. So bringing Neal in, having him be up to scratch, allowed Cameron to have so much more freedom. It gave Shannon Neal a lot more freedom himself to play the role that he was brought in to do. And that's why, like, and on top of, their smalls just having overall fantastic impact as well, that's why their forward line is just so fantastic.
Yeah, exactly. And as I said, Jeremy Cameron still takes 3.2 marks inside 50 per game. So it's not like he was having any less impact. But as I said, it's just so hard for teams to defend against. And as I said, like, the Smalls didn't have as much impact, but you got to wonder, is it just because their marking ability was so good? They didn't often necessarily need to generate as much general play scores. I mean, they still like, and the funny thing is, like, if you look at their general play leaders, who's leading the pack? It's none other than Jeremy Cameron. He took as much general shots. Oh, sorry, he took half of his set shots as general shot. That's a weird way to say it.
That is a
He
weird way to
still
say it.
like led the lead. He led his team in general shots. He had 55 for the year, and to put it in perspective, Carlton's highest amount of general shots generated by a player was 21. By I think I can't actually remember. It was someone a bit weird. So yeah, Jeremy Cameron. He just took so many shots.
He's just that kind of
152
player.
shots for the year.
He's just playing kick and kick
is-
with himself.
Yeah, exactly. 27.6% score involvement, 7.1 score involvements per game. Yeah, he was absolutely fantastic. And the rest, you know, I mean, you can argue Stengel had a down year. Maybe even Brad Close. Probably didn't have as much impact as he can do. But apart from that, there was like nothing wrong. And they even gave Ollie Henry a few games up forward where he did okay at times.
It's like you don't really
he's
have to worry
developing.
too much about the small forwards when they're quiet because their tools are just
Yeah.
going to always have a big impact. Whether it's your Ollie Henrys or your Ollie Dempseys, even if they have fantastic games, but your Stengels and your Closes have less impact, it genuinely doesn't matter because Cameron and Neil are always going to step up.
Yeah, exactly. So going on to their defense, which again, fantastic. Goals against 11.2, which is fifth in the league. Goals per inside 50 opponents. That should read 22.6, which is sixth in the league. Score per inside 50 from opponents, 41.9%, which is third in the league. The opposition ability to chain to score, 19.1%, which is fourth in the league. So if you compare that to theirs, it's like what? 6% more likely for a Geelong chain to score compared to their opponents in their given games. Pretty nice. Opposition inside 50 retention rate, 44.5, which is fourth in the league. Defensive 1-on-1 loss rate, only 24.8, which is sixth in the league. But their defensive 1-on-1s, they only went to them 10.5, which is tied 13th. Opposition forward half score, Geelong actually kept them to 31.1, which is first in the league. So their defenders in their forward half really did a good job. But they did I would say they were a bit looser in the back half. They allowed teams to sort of run with them, and I think most Geelong's fans were pretty happy with that because they could normally outscore them. But opposition back half score was 35.7, which is 12th in the league, which means they let their opponents score more in the back half than the forward half, which is normally a weird bit of a quirk. Their spoils, only 27.6, which is 18th in the league. The only really 18th I could find for Geelong. I didn't really comb the stats, but yeah, it was the only one I could see. Tackles, 54.8, which is second in the league. And opposition forward 50, ground ball gets 12.5, which is first in the league. So while it's not a miserly defense, and I think a lot of it benefits from how much they crushed weaker opponents, it's still pretty good.
Yeah, like their defensive rate is like, obviously it's not second to none. I definitely think, but it's very much on that upper echelon of defenses. And the fact that like they don't
I would say it's outside the elite defenses.
Yeah, agreed. And the fact that they don't even rely too heavily on like having to spoil a ball to be able to have impact, like they're really good with their hands on intercepts. They're fairly solid at one-on-ones when they need to be. It's not the be all and end all of their defensive play. And they're just able to really, like, they have fantastic pressure and fantastic tackle rates. That's why their defense holds up so well.
Yeah, exactly. And I think, it's one of those things where, it's really just, I think it's understated how much growth there actually has been in their defense. Obviously, Jack Henry is one of the key components of that. Sam de Koning is still pretty fantastic. And obviously the immersion of Connor O'Sullivan, who we'll talk about a bit later, So again, combine that with Stewart, he's still going pretty solidly. And Zach Guthrie, often a bit underrated. As I said, it's not the best lineup in the park. I wouldn't take it over Adelaide's or Collingwood's, but if you were to be like, okay, you take this defense, like, you're not complaining. Like, even without the context of, like, up the ground.
Sorry, I was having
Right.
Yeah, no, exactly
That's
right.
all right.
I completely agree. Like, if you just look at their defense purely on paper, like, and you're trying to build a team out of 3 quadrants, you'd probably take that defense because you want something. You don't
Yeah.
necessarily want something that has to be best at everything, but you like there's probably you want to really if you're building a perfect team. But like,
Yeah.
this is the sort of team structure that is extremely well rounded and doesn't have to be elite at everything.
Yeah, exactly. And we're going to talk about that in a second because we're going on to the movement stats, which, again, on this list is really good. I will say, like, going through them, like, they are a lot more middle of the pack in a lot of statistical categories that I just didn't list because I didn't think it told a story or anything. So, but they've still got a fairly good identity, and that makes up a lot. And, as I said, in terms of all this, at the end of the day, their inside 50 differential, 6.8, which is tied second in the league. So what they're doing right because they have so much more supply than their opponents. However, I will say to start, Geelong are a low disposal team, 351.7 disposals, which is 12th in the league, and their disposal differential runs at a 4.3 loss, which is 12th in the league. However, they put that into, with their disposals, they convert that into the most meters gained differential in the league, 426, which is first in the league. And meters per disposal is 17.6, which is second in the league. Last year, the disposal efficiency was near last in the league. Now it's 72.4, which is tied ninth in the league, so middle of the pack. But their kicking efficiency has skyrocketed up. 67.7, tied fourth in the league. Even with the induction of Bailey Smith, who, not surprisingly, still isn't the most accurate kick in the league, they were still able to really get that up there. And their kick percent, the percentage of disposals that it kicks is 63.1, which is first in the league. So they kick often, and they're actually hitting at a really good rate. And clangers, which, if you don't know what a clanger is, it's a kick that doesn't, or a clanger is a kick that results in the turnover without being a direct intercept. So they have a 5.9 loss, which is good because you want to be losing the clangers. That's first in the league. So basically, even though Geelong is a kick first team and a very high meterage team, they still hit enough targets. And that's a big difference between last year and this year, and why they seem so potent. Because they could just get chains to last. They can get the chains in their forward 50, and that's when they normally scored.
Yeah, it's a part of why that just attributes to their offensive stats so well. It's because they're able to be clean with their hands. They're very defensive minded in terms of not allowing an intercept to happen, and they're just able to continue to keep that ball moving.
Yeah, so I'll talk more about the center because, again, last year, I wouldn't say it's like a huge bane, but it definitely was a bit of a weakness. Center clearances, they ended up getting 13, which is second in the league. Not surprising with the amount of goals that they get. But the first possession differential, so even though they had a large amount of clearances, oppositions were able to get the ball in their hands 4.1 times more than Geelong did, which is, sorry, that should be third. That should be, was it 15th in the league?
Yes, that makes a little bit more sense.
Yeah. But however, despite the fact that opposition got hands on the ball first, they were able to get more post-clearance contested possession. So basically, after the first clearance, they were able to get the ball more, just despite, even if they didn't have first hands to the ball. 5.7, which is second. Intercept possession differential, as we said before, Geelong based their game on intercept, 4.9, second in the league, more than an opponent's. Ground ball get differential 3.7, which is third in the league. Mark differential 9.9, which is fourth in the league. So overall, in most of the general play stuff, Geelong just did more than their opponents in the air and on the ground. They were definitely a control team. That while they didn't bully directly like Brisbane did, like through their midfield, their general control of the game was just as similar and just as suffocating. But we do want to say it does show in the stats, you know, because a lot of these were beneficial from Geelong just absolutely smashing some teams. But the games where they played higher opponents, they tend to let them run with them.
Mm-hmm.
And we saw like a lot of games where they would beat high level opponents like 130 to 100. Like the game against the Western Bulldogs. I think there was a Brisbane game a bit like that. So their opposition ability to go from defensive half to forward 50 is 30.7, which is 10th in the league. And their ability for their opponents to go from deep in their forward 50, defensive 50 to their forward 50 is 22.9, which is 11th in the league. So they don't stop opponents' run as they do set up well around the ground with ball in hand.
Yeah, it's not necessarily a downside, but it's definitely an aspect that they could probably get a little bit better at working on in terms of. But I mean, again, it's also
I
not
guess
the
it's
be all
like,
and end all of this.
can you be good at everything? And I think the answer is no.
Correct.
You know what I mean?
The answer is no.
But like, there's so many positive stats that, you know, as I said, like anything that's like near the middle of the pack or negative, you just take it because there's just, you know, the proof's in the pudding.
No, it's exactly right. Like they're so good at so many other aspects of the game that it's not something that concerns them all that much.
Yeah. So as I said, so probably for non-fans of Geelong, they'll want to stop us prattling on about how good their 2025 was. But I do want to state, like, it was one of the better regular season performances compared to their competition average. Not competition average, compared to, you know, other relative stats.
Yeah.
You know, like I'm not going to claim that this team's better than 07 Geelong. But you know what I mean? It's like, from comparison to the competition, like they were still next level above. There was only few teams that compete in certain areas.
Oh yeah, absolutely agreed.
All right, so how does it look in 2026?
Actually, pretty much the same. I don't think they really lose anything major in terms of their outs. So on their outside of things, they traded Patrick Rechko for pick 99 to Richmond. He wasn't exactly getting game time anyway, kind of just stuck in the Geelong VFL system. But from what I've seen of his training and stuff on the Richmond socials, he looks fantastic, and I'm very excited to see him play. On the delisted side of things, they've delisted Cam Guthrie, Ted Closey, and Xavier Ivsic. I don't think they really lose too much there, maybe a little bit of depth. Cam Guthrie was a veteran. He was probably going to end up having to retire either the end of this season or next season anyway. So I'm pretty sure he has retired post delisting, but I don't think there's been anything anywhere that's actually said it. And then actual retirement is Mitch Duncan, who gave very long service to Geelong.
Yeah, very, very short service for Fremantle, very, very long service for Geelong. Cam Guthrie, I thought he signed somewhere for a VFL club, but I might be wrong on that. But either way,
he might be playing like in the VFL system, but I don't think he's on an AFL list.
Oh no, I don't think he is either. Ted Closey, again, he's sort of an outside player that just, didn't really look that up to snuff. So don't know much about Xavier Ivsic. So yeah, as I said, not really that much.
No, but what they do get on the inside of things is actually pretty big, because they get the Warpedo, James Warple from Hawthorn.
Yeah, it's a very interesting one because obviously, and we'll talk about it in a bit, he had a bit of a down 2025, found himself on the outer. But man, giving Geelong a 25-year-old, or maybe 26, I can't remember, who still has a lot of upside, can do a dirty job in the midfield. Like, that's just dangerous. Geelong is so good at picking up these sort of players and just patching them to do such a good role. That I just don't want to see Warpedo in a Geelong jumper.
No, neither do I.
Oh, no.
It feels cursed.
Yeah.
And then on their draft list, they signed pick 24 Harley Barker, pick 33 Hunter Holmes, rookie signing of Nick Driscoll, and Category B rookie Jesse Mellor.
Yeah, so as I said, they've got, honestly, not surprising for a solid core, but they've got a lot of zero-game players. So they sort of join a lot of last year's draft rank in, being on zero games. But yeah, as I said, nothing too surprising. Geelong have done a lot of trading, so they haven't had too many picks in the last few years. But they're only replacing a small amount of players anyway. So, it's still premier list management.
Oh yeah, like they haven't really had to shuffle around too much. Like they haven't lost a massive amount of depth. They've gained a really solid midfield player. Like there's not really and a bunch of kids that who knows what they'll end up being. So overall, like there's still some very, very positive signs on Geelong's list. And again, you'd only assume that it'll just add to their huge amount of statistics.
Yeah, exactly. And, as I said, their midfield slightly getting older, and not surprisingly, that's where their numbered picks went to. So hopefully if one of them can be a solid, either inside or outside midfielder, that will just keep on blooding.
Well, speaking of midfielders, I went with a mid forward for my first important player, and that is Sean Manor, the 28-year-old rookie of the year. Or whatever award that he got that he probably shouldn't have gotten.
Yeah,
it's a fantastic story coming out of the VFL. Went from just being a VFL rookie on a couple of teams right into Geelong's system and became an absolute superstar. His pressure and transition game is one of the best in their entire system, and possibly even some of the best in the entire league. His link-ups need a little bit of cleaning up, otherwise he's a very, very important cog into the work rate that they do.
And look, as I said, Geelong, they pick up a player, and it's what? 31 goals in a season. Like, that's more than some people's, goal leader. Like that's more than I think Carlton's highest goal leader, and it was still half of what Jeremy Cameron got for the year. So again, just absolutely fantastic. He's a decent pressure player. He's just an all-rounder, really.
Yeah, he is.
Like, he was the big moment, from the clearance, he was able to kick goals. He put a bit of pressure when he wasn't doing direct work. And as I said, it's just amazing that Geelong can find a player like this that's so well-rounded, and yet just slip through the cracks of the system. So, you've got to...
It's sad, and I spoke about this, I think, last season, when he actually won whatever Rookie of the Year kind of award that he won.
Yeah.
But, he was on Richmond's list in our VFL system. He played in the 2017 VFL Grand Final. So, we could have picked him up at some point during our premiership run, and we just didn't. And now Geelong gets a fantastic player. So...
As I said, it's got to be a part of Geelong's system, but I just don't see how much. Like, maybe they have a witch doctor or something, because it's got to be something otherworldly.
There's got to be a bit of voodoo, surely.
Yeah. But yeah, we'll go on assuming that there's no shamans present, and just give credit to their system.
Yes, we shall. Next on my list is Jack Henry. He had a very solid season down back. There's a few areas of his that I think does require improvement, though. Whilst he's very solid in his one-on-ones and fairly solid in his intercepts, I think his spoils, obviously, as we saw, their spoils worse in the league. Not great, but they don't let that be the be-all and end-all of their system. But I think an improvement of their spoil game would be pretty nice to see. And he needs to work a little bit more on his pressure game too. But otherwise, fantastic down back.
Oh, he plays having a go at pressure games this today, but
hey,
you're right. Like,
I'm a big fan.
Like Jack Henry, he's not as he's really just a lot of his work is in the pure defense part of the game, and you might say that he just doesn't quite do as much around the ground, but he doesn't really need to. No, it really depends how you want to look at him. But yeah, I do think He's absolutely fantastic because they needed a better one-on-one defender. Because Sam de Koning, he does an okay job at that. But yeah, as I said, his loss rate is probably a fraction high. He goes at a 30.6 loss rate. But as you mentioned, I think it's almost a bit unfair because like the ball comes down there, like they're pretty loose in getting the ball down there. So like there's times where he does a pretty solid effort, and he can get a few intercepts. But yeah, as I said, if they can get De Koning and Henry into like just a bit more defensively attuned, like again, that's when you actually go to elite. But it's also what I was saying before. Like I don't actually think Geelong's an elite defense. I think Jack Henry's sort of that defender where you can look at him and it's like, yeah, you would take him. Like he's a very exciting young player. But like, am I picking him to be like an elite defender? Like I would probably be picking like what, maybe 20 other players before him.
Yeah, like he's not the big standout player in their defense, but he does a lot of decent work. And like
Yeah.
if he just tidies up a little bit of his game, like he's like a perfect for a key defender position, essentially.
Yeah. But as I said, he works great within Geelong's system. Yeah.
Yeah, pretty much. And then last on my list is Jack Bowes. Stats wise, he had a fairly down year. But hopefully a rejuvenated 2026 will go a long way for the mature midfielder. An improvement in his clearance work, and again, pressure game. Granted, they have a ton of very, very valuable pressure mids in there already, so he doesn't have to be a massive improvement, but just, again, a little bit more cleaner statistics, and it would go a long way in that midfield.
Yeah, it's a very awkward one because he does come and have impact in games. But I think because Bailey Smith is like the dedicated, like go long sort of thing, it means Jack Bowes' disposal rate, which you would probably describe as average, maybe below average.
Yeah.
It just means that, you know, as I said, they're probably not getting as much out of him with ball in hand as they would a Bailey Smith. And Jack Bowes is probably a player you feed anyway, but still very important to have in the mix. So as I said, like Jack Bowes, you get a bit of improvement out of him. Especially since they've got paid, what was it, pick 3 or whatever to take him.
Oh yeah. Like that's crazy.
You know, so yeah, like the fact that he's actually still having a positive input. You know, when he was essentially discarded by a club, you know, just shows how strong the Geelong system is.
Yeah, exactly right. Exactly right.
All right, now again, pointing players, Connor O'Sullivan, key defender. I know we've sort of talked about Jack Henry, but like Connor O'Sullivan was technically the weakling to the Cats defense. And I think that's sort of like shown how it's evolved over the last few years because, as I said, Geelong nailed this pick. It was their only top-ish pick in Yonks. This was when they were down a year. They picked up Connor O'Sullivan. And this was essentially his debut year in 2025. And it showed like he can really stick it to it. He was a better one-on-one defender than Jack Henry. He was very, I would say he was very miserly. You know, as I said, he wasn't one that, you know, take too many intercepts or like threaten offensively. But he was really solid. I will say, like, again, a bit like Jack Henry, they could probably force a few more contests to the ground. Jack Henry being the same because, again, they're not the best one-on-one defenders. I think Connor O'Sullivan was like 20 or high teens. But yeah, as I said, like again, Connor O'Sullivan and Jack Henry like would be the key for their defense becoming actually elite.
Yeah.
And honestly, I'd put like as elite as their attacker. I don't think they can reach that heights, but like if you were just giving like a tag, like elite, above average, average, below average, yada yada yada, that step could be attained.
Yeah, no, I think that's a very fair assessment. Again, he's still very solid in what he does, but again, it's just those little bits that they need working on, and they just go up that next step.
Yeah, exactly. Now we'll talk about Reece Stanley in the ruck, and honestly, this is sort of I mean, because like we don't really talk about like the players that we know. We're just like week in, week out going to give like what, we know what they're going to give. But like Geelong have so many consistent performers, it's hard to like have a bit of a left of field pick. So as I said, Reece Stanley, I know he's not actually that vital to Geelong's game plan. He's easily replaceable by Blitzarves if they love in the mids.
Mm-hmm.
However, Geelong have 5 possible rucks on their list. Because again, most people, unless they're Geelong fans, wouldn't know. But I'll just go through them now because there's a few zero gamers. They've got Toby Conway, who's played 6 games. They've got a youngster called Edward Mitchells, 20 years old. Jacob Mollier, 19 years old. Joe Pike, 20 years old. All listed as rucks, all above 200 centimeters and all on 0 games. So, you know what I mean? Yeah, if he plays in the main league, he's probably going to be guiding a few young rucks as the years go on. And if he does go in the VFL, he is actually going to need to be a strong leader and develop the kids. So although I don't think he's going to have like a big, like he's not going to impact that much if Geelong's going to win the premiership. But I do think like in terms of developing for seasons to come, he's going to actually take up a bit of leadership. So hopefully Geelong can develop their next ruck talent, and Reece Stanley will be a part of that because they're probably still going to play Stanley.
I would
as far
assume
as I can tell.
he definitely get a few games at the very least.
Yeah.
Like I wouldn't expect him to be like straight out and only have Blitzarves in there. And like
yeah,
Conway,
like
maybe.
Toby Conway, I only vaguely remembering because he only played, I think, 1 game last year, 5 the other year before, whatever it is. So, yeah, I don't remember him being that threatening or interesting. So, yeah, again, unless someone comes out of nowhere. But, in terms of long-term future, it has been a sore spot. I don't really get how it can be a sore spot when they're like that good, but like, yeah, they don't play around their ruck, and some Geelong fans are like, oh, we need to turf him and bring someone else in. But yeah, I think he's still playing.
Yeah, I think he's a perfectly fine asset. Again, like his leadership, and like veterancy will definitely go a long way for the younger rucks because ruck, as we've talked about at length on this podcast, rucks take the longest time to develop out of any position in the game. So having a talented veteran like kind of help those younger players will definitely go a long way, even if it does mean he has to play more games in the seconds. But I'm sure he'll get a few games here and there in the first as well, and I don't see how any of that could really be a bad thing.
Yeah, and let's not forget, like Mark Blitzarves, I know he's a younger ruck, but like it's only by counting as 4 months. So
Yeah,
they will have to
It's very
plan.
close.
They will retire nearly at the same time.
I mean, fingers crossed for Geelong that they don't, because that may throw a spanner in the works. But who knows?
Oh, who knows? And yeah, they do play Sam DeKoning in the ruck as well. Like they're very versatile in who they ruck. Obviously they put up the Irish forward who we were talking about had a really good year.
O'Sullivan? No,
forward.
Forward. Not Manor. Yeah. The one that just went over and won like the thing in Ireland, right?
No. Jeremy Cameron, that plays with him. We were talking about him taking Hawkins.
Oh, Shannon Neal.
Live up again. Shannon Neal, thank you. Ended that pain. Yeah. And yeah, as I said, I do want to. It's hard because obviously, we're not going to talk about too much Tanner Brunn last year. Obviously, those are very outside coast to coast circumstances. But as we understand, he's going to come back this year. I mentioned him last year in my breakdown. I think he will be very good to add some inside depth. But is essentially saying what I said last year. So I think that will be important, but nothing really to add there.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. But in saying inside mid, they did just bring in an inside mid with the Warpedo.
Yeah, and as I said, dropped out of Hawthorn. I think his dumb kick approach probably clashed a bit with Hawthorn's cleaner style of play. I think Warple is an anti-Sam Mitchell player. So, however, Chris Scott, he loves meters, dirty or clean. And he has a tiny bit of ball winning ability, probably not as good as when he first debuted. Obviously, Newcomb took a bit more of that role, but he'll be dishing out a lot of uncontested possessions, getting a lot of meters gained, and just, adding to the stack of offensive talent they have lying in the wait. Not really much to say except for it's sort of just like Bailey Smith, except a bit more inside rugged.
I also think he's slightly bigger bodied as well.
Yeah, I'm not actually sure. It feels like he's strong. I don't think he's actually got that bigger body. I will actually check that for you there. I'll be interested in.
I'm sure there's a statistic somewhere if you could just go off of image.
No, I've got their playlist. James Wapple, 186 centimeters. They don't list weight anymore.
This is true. They do not.
Yeah. I can't tell you.
I don't know.
Bailey Smith is 1 centimeter shorter. I can tell you that.
Technically bigger, quote unquote.
Yeah.
But no, I feel like what the Warpedo offers is probably added pressure in that midfield, as well as just the way that he transitions out of that midfield, and obviously his dump kicks and stuff like that. Like the fact that he's able to do a lot more quote unquote dirty work in this midfield structure, when he's able to just pass it to a ball player who loves to run and loves to get clean meterage. Like I think that adds so much to just Geelong's midfield versatility.
Yeah, and as I said, it's not like Warple had like an abysmal 2025. Like he still averaged 20 disposals. Contested possession was just below 50. A few intercept possessions, which Geelong like. Led the midfield unit in ground ball gets, which Geelong will like. And yeah, as I said, he's got a good presence outside the first clearance. He's not a huge centre clearance winner. Although saying that, it is tied third from last year for Hawthorn. But again, we all know Hawthorn weren't exactly the best centre clearance team in the league. So, as I said, I think, again, for a value pick, absolutely fantastic. 26 years old. He's still got a lot in him.
Oh, yeah.
Like, as I said, he could probably add a few more, he could probably bulk up a bit and become that bull sort of player if Geelong trained him to,
Yeah, and actually,
like it's not that
not
that uncommon for a player to like bulk up again at like 25, 26, 27, 28.
Yeah, correct. And it's probably something that like Hawthorn probably needed him to do there, because they don't. It's what they were kind of missing in their midfield is a lot of high tackling pressure, and because they're a lot more of a movement team than a pressure team in that midfield. So I don't know, added benefit to Geelong.
Yeah, well, as I said, I think it was just as the dunk kick, because like I've got and as I said, if you go on Wheelo, they'll have this thing called like a player's retention rating and a threat rating. Threat rating is how often their kicks go to produce score, and retention rating is how often they retain. And James Warple is fairly negative in both. So last year, he just really wasn't fitting the system, even though his ball winning ability was okay. So like, if that improves, like, damn, you know what I mean? And it doesn't have to improve by much. It's not like he has to. Again, Geelong work in the dirty meters. So again, Warple might be a player that some people have ruled out as a bit washed. I think also people think he's older than 26. He does look a bit like that. Same as you weren't talking. We weren't talking about this on air. You said Starcevic. You thought he was like 31.
Oh, I didn't think it was 31, but I thought he was at least older than 27.
Yeah. So keep an eye out for him.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the Hawthorn fans, probably not the greatest of losses for you. Would have been a handy player to keep.
I think it was a system bad fit.
Yeah, agreed.
Did good when they weren't like the years a bit. I think it was a bit before Mitchell, or just like the start where they really needed to have a Warple type player because they just weren't winning anything out the middle. But they've sort of outgrown the use for him and finds a new place in Geelong.
Yeah, absolutely. But
So reasons for optimism. Oh man, most people would know from me saying this. I think they're the best home and away team in 2025. They don't have to deal with any great loss of talents or structure as of time of recording.
mhm.
And their age and talent is pretty spread too. All age groups, I think, have gun players, and they represent every line. And I think that's even more so when they get Tanner Brunn back, who, as I said, maybe you could say their midfield's aging, but then, as I said, Tanner Brunn's like 24 years old. 23, turning 24. So, now it's like, oh, now their midfield even has a younger player that represents that. So, every line has good old talent and good young talent, which is insane considering how much older veteran talent they have.
Yeah, it's really wild to think about that their age groups are so spread, and each of them, like, not all of their veteran talent is super elite, but
Hmm.
and it doesn't have to be. I mean, I
Nah,
guess your Jeremy Camerons and your Dangerfields probably at the top two, I would say, on that echelon. But then you look at like the sort of
yeah,
the mid mature age players, like you've got a ton there. They're all pretty much elite players at that, for the most part. Like they all do so much fantastic work. And then you've got the younger players, some who don't have as much game time as others, but the ones that do have the huge amounts of game time in that younger bracket are also an elite talent. Like it's crazy how spread they are.
yeah. And it's like, we're talking about it. It's like, when we talk about Conor O'Sullivan coming in, you talk about, the older Jack Henry. I know he's 27, but like, having them in playing games, they've got Jake Kolodajny sitting on the sideline. They've got Jed Hughes, who, as I said, he's a very good role player when he was on the field. But like Jack Martin's another one where they don't necessarily have to play Jack Martin. But if something goes wrong with one of the rookies, they've got a very reliable player to come back in.
Yeah, exactly.
So, as I said, yeah. And obviously, well, I found out rookie Tom Atkins, I forgot he got re-rookied. So it's technically like Tom Atkins is on their rookie list. And he was like one of the most influential players, like nearly led tackles last year. So yeah, as I said, make it that way you will.
Yeah, it's a crazy way to structure your list. And then like just onto that younger side, I think you've got like your Ollie Dempsey's and players like that who
Mm.
have only been in the system 2 or 3 years and have such like
Yeah.
huge amounts of impact. Like it's crazy for them. But just jumping over to my point, like the 2025 grand final should be a good motivator. The last grand final they played was pretty much the same kind of thing. Or last grand final that they lost, let me be more specific, was kind of the same kind of thing. Like their squad is super well balanced. We've already talked about this at length. If it's like if some of their very very minor issues, especially when like better teams get over them and they come a little bit more apparent, if they're able to get over those issues and improve a lot more on those sorts of issues, they will easily become probably the best team in the league. More as a by far and away, statistics
Yeah.
wise, than just as a very very obvious top four standout. Um, if their veterans are able to help their coaches train their young players a lot better, especially the ones that don't have very, very little game time. Again, these rucks, they need to be sort of fast tracked, I would say, a little bit quicker with Blitzarves and Stanley getting old. That's definitely something they'll have to pay a little bit more attention to. But otherwise, like it's very hard to kind of pull out a massive negative in their team right now.
Yeah, exactly. Which is what we're going to have to try to do because we've got reasons for pessimism, which is very, very hard. I said 2025. It really felt like it should have been Geelong's year because, as I said, the only other team that came close to matching them offensively sat on 9th position in the ladder, which was the Western Bulldogs. You can blame them for their fairly average stoppage work in the grand finals. But yeah, as I said, it was just concerning that such a dominant team could still be bullied come grand final day. And I think that their offensive collapse was just probably bad enough to where I think teams. It's not that I think that they won't pay them enough respect next year, but I think for how damaging they were in 2025, I don't think that's necessarily going to carry through to 2026 in terms of like aura, as the young kids would say. I don't know. Like, I
No,
feel
I think
like
you're right.
I feel like most people in a reasonable world would say, "Oh, Geelong are going to absolutely crush it again in 2026," and I think a few people were like, "Oh no, they're going to get old and slow, yada yada yada," like chuck them out. Where, as I said, from the stats that they're able to produce this year and their track history, like I don't think there's anywhere where they're even predicted to be outside the top four. And yeah, some people are like shoving them out there.
Yeah, I can't see a massive world where they slip out of the finals race at any time soon. But you
Yeah,
know, just the way that they did collapse in the 2025 grand final is either a good sign or a bad sign of things to come. Let's be real. Realistically, what we expect is for them to improve on the faults, which I just literally just talked about pretty much. Like improve on the faults that they had. That shows up when they come up against better quality teams. But what could also happen is the slow decline and inevitable downfall of this team that has been on the top for pretty much 30 years. They've only had an
yeah,
off year every now and then out of the top eight.
yeah, exactly. And I think the biggest one would be like obviously you never hoping. I mean, obviously you never hope for it anyway, but like a Patrick Dangerfield and Jeremy Cameron injury, like long term would like they still base a lot of their game on 30 plus year players. And, you know, as you said, if bad things happen and a few of those get injured, you know, as I said, like fortunes can change very quickly.
Yeah, that's exactly right. And you know, we hope no injuries happen to anyone really. And
No.
we talk about this a lot. We talked about this a lot with the Bombers. Is that like we don't want
Mm,
their injury list to be as big as it was. We want them to have a really good
no.
2026. But if injuries do happen, like, it could become the start of like a domino effect, especially for a club like Geelong.
Yeah, exactly. Because as I said, they do have I don't think they have a full rebuild coming up, but they've definitely have a closing window still. I just think it's going to be. I just think next year isn't going to be closed, but you know, as I said, bad luck can force a
With
window close, and
with the
before you know it,
with
Geelong could be rebuilding.
with the veteran players that they have now, I think they have at least 2026, 2027.
Yeah, I
I
would say so.
imagine because Dangerfield is like 35, I imagine this year is probably his last. But the other veterans that they have, they
Yeah,
could probably carry on at least another couple, like 1 or 2 years, give or take.
yeah. As I said,
It'll be
this
interesting to
year
see.
Dangerfield, Stanley, um, and maybe you know a few other death players. So I said like Colin Dashney, if he doesn't get games, he would probably either retire or move on. Jack Martin might be another one if he gets injured. Jed Buse. So that's like a chunk of experience you're taking out of that list. If they all happen in the space of a year,
Yeah, it's going to be very interesting to see what happens at the end of the 2026 season.
and they've already lost Guthrie and uh, uh, the Fremantle ex Fremantle player.
Now I'm blanking on it. We were literally just talking about it.
Yeah, Duncan.
Yeah, Mitch Duncan. That's right. Yes. Yeah, so
Actually, was it? No, I'm thinking of Menangola.
no, you are
I
thinking.
think Duncan was just from WA.
He might have been just from
Um,
WA. Anyway, yeah,
yeah,
they've lost a bit of that aging depth, and they'll likely lose a little bit more. So it'll be very interesting to
yeah.
see what they do
So I
about
said,
that.
like that could be fast tracked, and as I said, with their, you know, with their collapse, you know, as I said, like you don't want that. As much as, like I said, I don't think a grand final would scar them. They definitely could get in their own heads.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. All
All right.
right. So, what's the overall verdict? I don't think it's any surprise to you is that we just think they're going to be a top of the table threat. As not too many areas of major concern, and their depth even have high quality players. Takes a lot to displace them. I put the predicted range first to fourth, but honestly, I am so much more confident that they're going to make top two. That I would say that it's more than a I'd say it's a 70% chance in my mind that they're going to make top 2. From like my vagaries of like
that's pretty
how
high. That's pretty high praise. And honestly,
Yeah.
I don't think you're that far off. I agree that they'll be at least a top 4 lock. I'm probably a little bit less on the percentage of them being top 2. I'm probably more like a 40 something percent. Just because I think there are a couple of other teams that'll likely have improved in the off season and will be a little bit better at challenging for those top 2 positions. But I think they're definitely going to be up there. And I don't think they're going to have too many issues with staying top 4.
Nah, you wouldn't imagine so.
No, I think they're pretty comfortable in being contenders for the flag, and I don't think that's going to change in 2026.
Yeah. One day we're going to make a preview on a rebuilding Geelong side. One day.
One day, but it might still be for another 3 years or so at minimum.
Yeah.
But that does bring us to the end of the preseason analysis episode for Geelong. Thank you also so much for coming and hanging out with us. Thank you for liking, commenting, subscribing, and just enjoying listening to us ramble about this team. Hopefully we'll ramble about them less because maybe I do want the downfall to happen.
I think everyone half wants a downfall of Geelong. But
they've been up there for so long. It's only fair.
But they play such nice football.
I know.
Like,
it is very
everyone
clean.
complains that sometimes like football isn't high scoring, but like Geelong is the team you showed your dad. You know what I mean? If you're like, oh, football can still be exciting in 2026, 5, whatever.
Yeah, this is true. Like, granted, some of the rules that they brought in, they're all very questionable. Like the rules that they brought in to stop Richmond, like the stand rule. It's not a great rule. But Geelong make it work, and they are pretty entertaining to watch. To be fair.
Yeah.
Next week's episode, Friday's episode. I had to try to remember when we're recording this. I believe it's Gold Coast next, off the top of my head.
Yeah. Technically, at least Gold Coast and GWS will be our next 2.
Yes.
If we get free done, hopefully, it might be whatever's after that. Hawthorn. Alphabets are hard.
Gold Coast, GWS, Hawthorn, I think is correct. I'm not even looking. I'm not even going to try to correct myself, but I think it's correct. So stay tuned for that, and we'll hopefully see you all then. So until then, take care.